Well, you can't have a channel about building a life in Finland without talking about this beast of a topic, which is learning the local language.
No, suomen kielen oppiminen ei ollut mitenkään negatiivinen kokemus, sillä voisin sanoa, että ei koskaan tuntunut, että suomi on mahdoton projekti. Kyllä jokaisella on oma tarina, miten ihmiset oppii kieltä, mutta sitten näistä on tärkeää myös puhua, että sitten muut tietävät, että miten kielten oppiminen menee eri ihmisille ja inspiroidaan toisiamme. Mun mielestä kieli on kyllä aika tärkeä osuus tätä maata ja tärkeä osuus myös kulttuuria.
Hey, and welcome to Couple of Expats, the channel where we discuss building a life in Finland. If you're new to our channel, my name is Megha, and today we are addressing a very important topic, which is learning Finnish. So joining me today is Ameya Foujdar, who has graciously agreed to give his time and share his tips of conquering the Finnish language. Yes, conquering, mastering, because he has been working in Finnish language. Can you believe it? Yes, it totally blows my mind. But you will be able to hear tips straight from somebody who has done the impossible. Because it's not impossible. Hi, and welcome to Couple of Expats. Ameya, we are so glad that you're able to join us and share about your Finnish learning journey with our audience. So if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Ameya Foujdar. I have been in Finland now since 2017. I moved here as a master's student. I'm originally from India. I have a master's degree in information society and law from the University of Turku. Lived in Turku most of my time here, and currently I work at CSC, which is the IT Center for Science, based in Espoo as a development specialist. And I have spent a considerable amount of time in the last few years learning Finnish, and I'm glad to be able to talk more about that here today.
Okay, so let's dive into the big question, and that's how has your Finnish learning journey gone?
Yeah, so I can say that my Finnish learning journey began after graduation. So once I completed university here, which was for 2 years, I joined a full-time Finnish course because at that point I had realized that I want to learn Finnish and how important Finnish is when it comes to building your life here. So I joined this, it's called an integration course.
Okay.
It's part of this kotoutumisohjelma, which is integration program. And these courses are organized in different schools. There's also multiple schools in the Turku region here. So each region has their own schools. So I was part of one of these schools called Practising. I was there for 2 years learning Finnish quite intensively. And my own approach towards the language was quite active. And I decided to quite immerse myself and in a way bombard myself with Finnish through every direction as I could. And I started to use every interaction, you can say, to my benefit, that I wanted to use Finnish and I wanted to make those mistakes early on. So that has been, I would say, a really important part of my journey, since we speak about my journey. And then it continued on after those 2 years. I transitioned into working life, and then came this next stage of learning Finnish through work, which I think is one of the best ways to learn.
Okay, but this video is about learning Finnish, so I must ask that you speak Finnish for our audience.
Tietysti voisin. Osaan suomea vai osaanko? No voisin sanoa, että olen nyt kyllä aika hyvin päässyt sinne sisään Suomen yhteiskuntaan, että voisin sanoa, että tämä aihe kyllä on todella tärkeä mulle ja todella tärkeää myös puhua tästä avoimesti ja että oikeasti on mahdollista oppia suomea ja on mahdollista myös oppia suomea sillä, että on mahdollista käyttää sitä niin kuin töissä ja eri tasoilla. No, suomen kielen oppiminen ei ollut mitenkään negatiivinen kokemus, sillä voisin sanoa, että ei koskaan tuntunut, että suomi on mahdoton projekti, sillä kielen oppiminen ei tarvitse olla aina semmoinen todella monimutkainen asia, että sitä on mahdollista niin kuin lähestyä todella niin kuin avoimesti, ja se on kyllä aika henkilökohtainen prosessi, miten se kielten oppiminen menee ihmisille, mutta se on hyvin kyllä mahdollista oppia ja kyllä jokaisella on oma tarina, miten ihmiset oppii kieltä, mutta sitten näistä on tärkeää myös puhua, että sitten muut tietävät, että miten kielten oppiminen menee eri ihmisille ja inspiroidaan toisiamme. Mutta siis osaan suomea.
Totta kai.
Joo, ja viime vuodesta olen myös Suomen kansalainen. Olen aika ylpeä siitä. Ja kyllä tuntunut aika hyvältä, kun sain ekaa kerta sen päätöksen, että minusta tulee Suomen kansalainen. Ja mun mielestä kieli on kyllä aika tärkeä osuus tätä maata ja tärkeä osuus myös kulttuuria, että jokaiselle kyllä voisin sanoa, että on palkitsevaa, eli kielen oppiminen vaatii paljon energiaa, vaatii paljon työtä, mutta se on palkitseva ja se avaa yhteiskuntaa, se on ikkuna siihen yhteiskuntaan ja suosittelen kyllä sitten kaikille oppia tätä kieltä.
Okay, so I want to know more about the integration course. How was it? Was it something did you expect it? Were you surprised by it? Was it intensive? If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Intensive is certainly how I would describe it. Not just because of the time that you had to put in every day. That was already, I think, substantial. It was like a full-time job to be there every day. But at the same time, I think it really pushed me and all the people that were there out of their comfort zone in a way that you had to only use Finnish there. You could not use any other language. And that is really important in the early stages of your learning. Mm-hmm. That you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to, even if it's really broken, you will end up using maybe a mixture of Finnish and English there in the beginning, but you have to do it. And then the teachers will only reply to you in Finnish. So even if you don't understand, you have to have your confused face on and you have to go about your day. It was intensive on many levels. It was also intensive in a way that they had really a good structure to the courses. So we had each day allotted to different subjects. I remember Wednesday was the day allotted to culture studies. It was called culture studies, where it was more about how you deal with different situations that occur.
Yeah.
So going to the shop, going to the bank, going to having a Kela discussion. So that's part of the culture.
Yes.
The course was really practical in that way, that you actually entered those situations. And then we had specific days, like Mondays and Tuesdays were grammar intensive. And in the mornings, we were learning new subjects. And in the afternoon, then we were just doing exercises. We were solving actual grammar problems.
So how long was your day?
The day was, I would say, 6 hours of learning, which is quite intensive.
Wow.
And like full-time.
Yeah.
Full-time job. So
6 hours and homework.
Yeah. And homework after that.
And what was the duration? So how many weeks or months was that?
The course was a full academic year. So it started... It started, it's full time. So it started in, I remember August. August is when I gave the interview for the course, and then started in September, like how university studies started. And it ended in May. In the month of May, we had our final exam. So a full academic year, like in the university.
So we all know that you can sit in a classroom and try to learn a language, but language learning can also be really fun. And that's where I want you to tell us a little bit about how did you immerse yourself in the language?
Yeah, really good question. So immersion, of course, and these different ways that you can immerse yourself with the language, of course, really depend on what you like. Mm-hmm. And what I did is I really felt that it was important that I was listening to a lot of Finnish at that early stages. So I would like to maybe talk about this in two different stages. Mm-hmm. The first one is how you can have these different complementary methods to supplement your studies in the early stages of learning Finnish, and then in the later stages when you're actually able to a little bit speak. Mm-hmm. So in the early stages, for instance, what I did when I was not able to speak much Finnish, not able to formulate those spontaneous sentences, is, of course, I was trying to speak whenever possible, but then I was focused more on listening as much as I could. And it's not always that your friends have the patience of always speaking Finnish with you when you're not able to respond appropriately. So then what I did is that I was listening to the radio. back then there was this Yle Puheradio, speaking radio. So it's a radio where they also play songs, but then they also have these different topics that they talk about every day. And there's this morning radio that I still listen to, which is one of my favorites. So I really recommend, and this is the state radio, so everybody has access to that. So that is one of the things that I really remember from my early days of learning Finnish, that I used to do that. I also used to write down the new words that I used to listen to. I used to ask my teacher and trouble her every morning with the new words that I had, because I had like an hour bus ride.
Hope your teacher's watching this video, yes.
Maybe Neela is watching, so then. I had a 1 hour journey to the school in the bus every day. So that also time I used to mostly listen to this morning radio. Other things that I used that complemented my studies in the early stages were making flashcards. I remember I used to make those also before I went to school. And I used to use, I think it was Quizlet was the program that I used back then. Listening to music also has been a big part. So not just radio, but essentially Finnish music. And that uses a lot of spoken language, but that is important to also listen to at the same time. So that was, I think, really complimentary in the beginning. That was something that helped me. And then in the later stages, when I was already B2 and close to C, I can say, so maybe a lot of people don't understand this terminology of this EU.
But more advanced.
Yeah, so advanced learning stages, I would say when I was able to talk about more abstract topics in Finnish, at that stage, I would say more just having an open attitude to, if I get some documentation from Kela, for instance, I used to read that in Finnish.
Sounds boring, but
yeah,
okay.
no, like just not being averse to these things, because you're easily averse to these things. You see?
Definitely.
So yeah. So I try putting myself in these uncomfortable situations is what I have now gotten used to.
Love it. Who knew? Kela can be your learning buddy too.
Yes, Kela can help you learn. And that is the language that you would not often use when you actually speak Finnish, when you read these official documents. But at the same time, it is important to know those.
So that's more kirjakieli.
That is kirjakieli, but that is also, again, not the kirjakieli that you would use.
Okay.
So the kirjakieli that you would use is then quite simpler than what is used in these official documents. That is just official language.
So you had the whole spectrum. You had kirjakieli, puhukieli, and then also, I don't know what Kela language.
So there is many spectrums. There's tekstikieli, which is just you would use to like text people. That is a completely different language, I feel. Of course, languages have these different dimensions to them.
For sure.
So, yeah. So Finnish has that, and exposing yourself to all these different elements then just exposes you to these different spectrums of the language, which is good. I felt that it helped me a lot. And I feel that at the later stages, also starting to read actual Finnish books is also something that helped. So in my second year of this language learning course, I was also part of this lukupiiri, which is like a reading group. And I read my first Finnish novel at that time.
What was it?
It was this Kari Hautakaisen, this Juoksuhaudantie. It was the name of the book. That is a bit of a complex book to read as your first Finnish book, but that is the first book that I read.
Okay, so if someone wants to start their learning journey online, are there any tools that you used in your process?
Those I used in the beginning. I would say there's a dictionary called Kielitoimisto, and that is the one that I used. So that was pretty useful. I also heard that a lot of teachers use that. So that is mainly used to find out if you want to know how a word is conjugated into different forms and how to use different endings for the words. So that is really useful. A lot of teachers use that. So it's a trustable source to check that. And other resources, I would say I have myself used this Yle Areena app, which is the state media producer app, a lot. And they have a good section for podcasts. So I used to listen to quite a few podcasts there. There's also a podcast on languages there, if you go ahead and search.
So how important would you say it is to practice speaking Finnish language at work with your colleagues?
I think it's been the most impactful part of my learning journey up till now. And why I say up till now is because I think the language learning journey is like a lifetime process.
Lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning, in a way, yes. So I think it was the most impactful part because that is when, I learned the Finnish working life language because it is a bit different than what you would use then in your everyday life. So the words that you use, for instance, in your meetings, all the working life lingo that is there. So that was good to get a good insight into that. I would also say that all the small talk that happens, or you have to, at the end of the day, build synergy with your colleagues. And if you're able to speak Finnish, then you're able to do that in a language that is natural, true Finns. So that happens then at a good level. I would say for me, practicing Finnish at work kind of opened up my language horizon. So you can say it was like a logical next step for my Finnish learning journey. That it took me then from this B level to the C level, but which is more than talking about work, is a lot talking about. So I do a lot of development work. It's talking a lot about abstract things, about developing ideas, expressing ideas. So expressing ideas in a different language is not easy. So that is what I got to do actually at work. And of course, in the beginning, it was not easy. And I had to learn then these new words. But it happened quite naturally. And I had colleagues that supported me to do that. So I'm quite grateful for that.
Yeah, you had a supportive environment.
I had a supportive environment. And I would say, okay, this is a really good mention, that how important a good environment is for learning Finnish. So having a good work environment and a good employer that supports learning Finnish kind of takes then your possibilities to a different level.
Yeah.
And that is what happened.
So I think it's very important for anyone who is on a learning journey to have that environment. Yeah. But what did that environment look like to you? Can you give just a few examples of how did your colleagues, your boss, how did everyone support you?
Yeah, so really good question. My boss was quite supportive from the beginning when I started my work, and there was quite a clear work familiarization path laid out. My first job back at the university was supposed to be almost completely in Finnish. It was completely in Finnish, but there was a good laid out plan for me. So they knew that I was not a native speaker and that I needed some time to pick up the language. So the meetings were in Finnish, but then I had this space where if I wanted to take my own time, to have, let's say, go over the agenda of the meeting, and we went over the agenda of the meeting together and stuff like that. And I was just given space. I think having this space is important. And then I was at some point also conducting presentations in Finnish. I was inviting different stakeholders, let's say, contacting them in Finnish, and basically doing everything in Finnish.
Yeah.
But there was then this support that was available, that if I needed some legroom there, that I could then just take time. I never wanted to switch to English. And that is not what I meant by legroom. I also had this thing for me, myself, set up that I will not switch to English as much as possible. So
you were stubborn.
Yeah, I was stubborn. And I think it's important to be stubborn when it comes to learning the language. I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like they gave you space to make mistakes.
Yes.
Which is probably very, very important, to be able to make mistakes, to actually get to the point where you are good at the language.
Exactly. I think that's one of the most important parts of learning a language, is that you have to have the space to make mistakes. And the more mistakes that you make, the faster you will learn the language. The more embarrassing situations you are in because of your mistakes, the more you will have that drive to learn. So definitely, I think I was lucky to get that environment. And you also, in a way, have to construct that environment for yourself. You have to be adamant that, okay, you will try to solve this situation without switching to the other language.
Okay, so you mentioned mistakes, so I must ask, do you have any funny stories about language mistakes that might have happened to you?
Yes, I think if I start talking about all the funny stories that I have, it will be dark.
We'll be here.
So I think one really funny story that I remember, I was with one of my colleagues having a coffee, work coffee, at one of the restaurants in the city center. And I made this mistake where so we were speaking in Finnish. I used the verb, instead of tajuta, I used tuijottaa. And this is one of the mistakes that I was making at that point quite often. And I think that was the last point I made that mistake, because I was so embarrassed after that.
Okay, but please explain it to me and other people who may not.
So what it means is, tajuta is something that you would say that, okay, I understand something.
Yeah.
And then tuijottaa is like to stare at someone. And it can also be in a bit of a strange context.
Okay.
So if I use that word in the wrong context, it would mean I stared at someone.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I wanted to say I was thinking.
Okay.
about something.
But the words are really similar.
The words are really similar, they sound really similar, and there's so many words like that. So
Yay.
Finnish is full of those words that quite sound similar. But learning the language is all about these experiences, so they don't have to be negative. Making mistakes doesn't have to be negative. And I feel making mistakes is extremely important.
Yeah.
Without those, you can't get anywhere. So every mistake is one step forward.
Totally.
Yes.
Any other anecdotes? Any other stories?
In context of these mistakes, I more wanted to say also how important it is that you don't have to be scared about how Finns would react to your mistakes. I think Finns are usually really supportive of when you're learning the language. And you should not also, as an adult, I know it's difficult to make mistakes. And then I feel that when you start to speak in the beginning in a different language, you feel that your IQ automatically goes down in a way because you're not able to express yourself at the same way that you're able to express yourself in your comfort language. So I think making those mistakes is just part of the journey. And Finns are really supportive. They have usually been for me. So I think you should just be patient and make those mistakes and not be afraid.
So your journey has been so inspiring so far, but what about some of the struggles? Have you or your people you know had some struggles that you want to share?
I have definitely had struggles. I think the early stages in the language learning are the most difficult ones because it's full of uncertainty, how the language learning process will eventually turn out, if you will actually be able to learn the language in good time. Because I also had some time limits there that I wanted to find a job in my own time limits that I had set to myself that, okay, I want to get some things in order. I think the biggest struggle was in the beginning as well, that I heard that Finnish was a difficult language to learn. And that increased the uncertainty. I had assumed that it would take at least like 5 to 6 years before I would get anywhere to actually using the language at work.
And that was wrong.
And that was big time
Very wrong.
Big time wrong. Yeah. And how wrong it was, I can also explain, is that I got my first Finnish language interviews for jobs spoken completely in Finnish after 2 years of that language learning. So it did not take as long. And that is because I had this opportunity also. I was lucky enough to have this opportunity to immerse myself in these 2 years and that my brain was able to keep up. I think common struggles usually here are also consistency, and not everybody has the time and the energy to put into Finnish.
I can relate to that.
So yeah. So I luckily had that at that point in time, which sort of gave me the boost to go forward in this language journey, which I personally really wanted as well. Another struggle I feel was that actually in later on in the language learning, the resources available to, once you get close to, I would say, sea level, which is close to native level, it's hard to find actual learning material if you want to, like, in the literary context of the language, if you want to learn more, it's hard to find material. But then, of course, the best learning happens using the language.
Yeah.
So you just then have to find those situations. And if you're working, of course, then everything that you do is a situation where you can use Finnish. But then for those that are not working, then that becomes a challenge, I can imagine.
Find situations where you can use the language.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be in that international bubble in that context, that go outside that and have those situations open up to you where you can use Finnish. There are other challenges, of course, and they change from person to person, quite subjective in that context. But from what I have heard, so my attitude towards Finnish was I was myself, as I said, quite stubborn. I did not want to switch to English as much as possible. But then on the other side as well, when in the early stages that you're talking to Finnish people, to native speakers, you are not able to have that spontaneous language in the beginning. So it doesn't come spontaneously, and then it's really easy to switch to English.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot, whether you want it or not. And that did, of course, happen to me in the beginning as well. I tried to be stubborn that it doesn't happen. And what I did for that in the beginning was that one of the first few things that I asked my teacher to teach me was that I wanted to say, I don't want to switch to English, and I'm learning Finnish, I want to practice Finnish, and I want to continue speaking in Finnish. Can you continue? Yeah, so what I would usually say in those situations was that, hey, olen tällä hetkellä harjoittelemassa suomea ja mielelläni haluan jatkaa suomeksi. So since we were talking about using Finnish in practice, would you like Mega to ask me something in Finnish?
Yeah.
Finnish.
Mitä sun suosikkisana suomeksi?
Nice, yes. Mun suosikkisana suomeksi on lyhytäytekynä, mikä on semmoinen kynä,
Pen?
mikä käytetään. So it's a mechanical pencil that you use usually when you are sketching, I guess. So yeah.
Why is that your favorite?
It was a word in the beginning that just caught my attention, and it has a lot of this Y letter, which is in the beginning hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
So maybe I have some trauma from that word.
And on that note, thank you so much, Ameya, for coming.
you.
Thank you. It was very wonderful to have you, and this has been a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, we have finally done it. We have made a video that has both English language and Finnish language. How was that? Should we be speaking more Finnish in our videos? Let us know in the comments. A very big thank you to Ameya Foujdar. You can find him on LinkedIn. We are going to leave a link of his contact information in the description box below if you do want to get in touch. In this video, we have proved that it doesn't take 5 years, 10 years. It can take as little as 2 years to be confident in a completely new language. So we hope you have taken a lot away from this video and you have enjoyed me speaking very poor Finnish. If you have, do remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel about life in Finland. If you have any questions, remember to leave them in the comments below, and see you next time.